Hi, everyone, and good night. My name is Suzanne Hume, and I am the Educational Director and founder of CleanEarthForKids.org. We welcome you and our wonderful, fabulous, fantastic youth board and interns. I'll start by introducing Janice.
Hi everyone, my name is Janice, Team 4, hashtag Water is Life, hashtag Protect Water. I just want you to know if you're a student watching this, you can earn community service by writing 2 pages of notes and a short summary of what you learned. More information can be found on cleanerforkids.org. You can also enter our contest at cleanerforkids.org, and you can help protect wildlife, public lands, clean air, clean water, and make a difference. You can go to our contest page at cleanerforkids.org and do art, music, writing, poetry, dance, STEM projects, infographics, and so much more. Some examples of our contests are poetry made from one of our poets, Kevin, and these are the Hands contest and Protect What You Love contest that was created by one of our artists, Chelsea. And your art, infographics, video clips, stories, essays, or projects help bring awareness to why we need to protect nature, clean water, clean air, oceans, rivers, streams, wildlife, forests, parks, our food, and our health. You can also sign petitions, so go to cleanerforkids.org to check out the many petitions you can take part in to help make a difference. At Cleaner for Kids, we have 6 teams, and social and environmental justice are a part of all of what we do. I am on Team 4, hashtag Water is Life, hashtag Protect Water. Team 4 works to protect drinking water, oceans, rivers, and streams from pollution, oil spills, and fracking, which are all harmful to our water. The Clean Water Act, the Clean Water Rule, and the Streams Act protect our water. Unfortunately, during the Trump administration, there have been 100 environmental cuts or rollbacks of our protections, many of which include rollbacks for our protections of our water. We need to know how to protect our water from toxic chemicals and plastics in our oceans, rivers, and streams. To have safe drinking water, clean oceans, and healthy ecosystems, we must stop pollution and be informed. Leanna, could you please introduce yourself in Team 1? Also, big shout out to Leanna because her birthday is tomorrow.
Thank you so much, Denise. Hi, everyone. My name's Leanna. I am the team lead for Team 1 for the Youth Board. We work on climate action plans, renewable energy, and sustainability. Our website has examples of climate action plans and resolutions for your cities and school districts, so people can submit climate action contests, ideas, and actions. Tonight, Jillian and I will talk about climate action plans being proposed. We also must reduce greenhouse gases and toxic emissions coming from power plants and cars. So to kind of summarize what greenhouse gases are, they are these gases that are emitted typically from like cars, buses, or factories, from mining, from a lot of different sources that contribute to this thing called the greenhouse effect, which traps these gases in our atmosphere and traps sunlight when sunlight comes through, and it traps it within the atmosphere, making it really, really warm over long periods of time. So as a result of this, we have climate change, and climate change increases severe weather types. So like we have droughts, floods, record-breaking temperatures, really violent storms, tornadoes, a lot of hurricanes, and a lot of other things, which is really scary, but and also important to discuss because a lot of these severe weather changes hit frontline communities. So frontline communities are predominantly communities of color, so they have like Black, Indigenous, and other people of color within them. And these frontline communities are not only exposed to climate change more often than others, but they're also exposed to these sites of pollution or of where a lot of toxic chemicals and gases are coming out. So they target these low-income communities because they don't have the funds and the means to live away from these toxic factories or these areas that have more heat and so forth. So, and they also have a lot of bad infrastructure, or like buildings, so they're not really protected. So knowing this, we can establish that climate change is a racial, social, and environmental justice issue. So it not only is important because it talks about the environment, but it's also important because it's hitting these communities disproportionately or more frequent than others. And so it's important to address that as such. So in order to combat climate change, one of the things that we can do or advocate for is the divestment from fossil fuels. So fossil fuel companies and industries, these are the biggest polluters, and they cause the most greenhouse gas emissions. So what we want to do is we want to take money out of these companies. We want to defund these companies and put that money into renewable energy. So how we do this is through divestment. So you don't pay for, because you don't want to pay for something that's polluting our air and hurting our health. So divestment means to take money out of these companies, and typically you would sell your the money you put into it. You would sell it, or you would just take it out and put it into something different, like renewable energy, which is really healthy and good for our environment in comparison to fossil fuels. So renewable energy is like solar, wind, water, and so many other more healthier types of energy sources that we can use. We must also decarbonize or reduce our carbon emissions or the amount of carbon we produce. So this kind of can be summarized as a carbon footprint we have, a little footprint we leave on the world based off of how much carbon we use. So we must protect these vulnerable communities from the effects of climate change, as well as just the health of our planet, ourselves, and other animals living on it. So tonight we will learn about natural solutions to climate change that we as individuals can take, such as planting trees, also larger scale ones, such as restoring wetlands and protecting our public lands. So we can help reduce the carbon in our atmosphere and reduce toxic air pollution and just pollution overall. Unfortunately, this brings me to discuss how during the Trump administration, there have been the 100 rollbacks or cuts to environmental protections. So this hurts our air and water, which hurts our health because we breathe the air and we drink the water. And some of these rollbacks also limit science, scientific data, environmental reviews, and the public's ability to be informed about what's going on and speak out about it. So the rollbacks under the current administration cut decades of environmental protections and the public's right to know, which is really devastating, and it needs to be addressed because not many people know about it. In fact, NEPA, or the National Environmental Policy Act, was passed in 1970 and has been the cornerstone and foundational environmental law for the last 50 years, and under our current administration it is being cut, which means it's being eliminated. It seems that the Trump administration is attempting to cut as many protections for air and water before the election and allow polluters to continue to pollute before the election. So these polluters are typically oil companies, pesticide companies, which are these toxic things used on, usually used on plants. And these companies have given a lot of large amounts of money to Trump's campaign. And so that's why he's allowing for them to pollute and create more toxic air. So the Trump administration basically gutted this law, which requires environmental impact studies of federal projects. So NEPA looks to see if projects are damaging to water, air, and wildlife. They're kind of like, you can think of it as the police for the environment. They're making sure that nothing else can harm them. However, and if something is harming the environment, NEPA creates a discussion happens about how things can be designed and built so that they are less harmful. So it's kind of, NEPA is like this law that overlooks and makes sure that our environment is protected. And sometimes through a thing called NEPA review, when there's a thorough one, there's been shown that the project could be so harmful and damaging that it will be stopped through that review. So without this law, racial, social justice, climate, and environmental justice cannot be served because NEPA helps to protect communities, especially these communities of colors we've discussed, and low-income people who have less resources to fight these projects, which harm their air and water, because a lot of these big companies that are very rich are polluting the environment, and it's hard for individuals like us to fight against big companies like that. So we're extremely concerned about these 100 rollbacks and the taking away of protections, which result in problems for our health, and we need clean air to breathe and clean water to drink. So we learned about this Harvard tracker because of the New York Times, and we just want to thank you again, New York Times, for publishing this article about the 100 rollbacks, and thank you to Harvard and Columbia for their trackers and keeping people informed. These trackers are available on our website, cleanforkids.org, and they allow us to see how these rollbacks are, how they are doing, which ones have already been done, which ones are in progress, and just kind of allows us to educate ourselves on what's going on in the government. You can also do our Call It Out challenge to call out things such as pollution. So you can create a video, a song, poem, any type of media form, and call out something that's happening. You can call it one of these rollbacks and say, you know, hey, this isn't okay, and then show how you do that in a video and just send it to us at cleanforkids.org. So now I'd like to transfer the floor to Catherine. So would you like to talk about Team 2?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Leanne. Hi, everyone. I'm Catherine. I'm part of Team 2, which involves protecting wildlife, plants, gardens, planting trees in gardens, as well as protecting forests. As you know, the terrible fires in Northern California started by lightning strikes. The good news is the redwood tree survived. Incredibly, 2,000-year-old tree stood strong against the flames. The resilience or staying power of the redwood trees was remarkable. Next, moving on to the bald eagle. The bald eagle was successfully taken off the endangered species list in 2007, but threats still remain as the fight continues. Threats to habitat include hunting, habitat destruction, poisoning, and horrible effects of the pesticide DDT. Looking back into 1963, it is amazing how bald eagles recovered from lows of 417 known nesting pairs to now, where there are more than 100,000 species of bald eagles in the entire US. Thank you to the important protections of the ESA and work from individuals aiming to end the extinction of these magnificent birds. If you love trees, forest, ocean, rivers, streams, or you have a favorite animal to protect, you can hashtag protect what you love. You can choose to help save a forest or animal and enter our contest to bring awareness of the animal or a specific place in nature. As Denise said, you can make a difference with your creations, such as paintings, drawings, music stories, writing video clips, or any other artistic form that you are passionate about. You can do art, music, writing, or video clips about protecting your favorite animal or place and how to protect it. Another way to hashtag protect what you love is to sign a petition. Please sign our petition on action.foe.org to protect public land in Wyoming. This land is home to elk, mule deer, and the greater sage goose. If the lands are leased to Big Oil, these creatures' habitats will be destroyed. This is a picture of fracking sites already in Wyoming. Fracking increases earthquakes, which cause a split in the ground, landslides, avalanches, and holes in the ground, and severe erosion. Please sign this petition to stop the Bureau of Land Management from leasing thousands of acres of prime wildlife habitat in Wyoming for oil and gas. Use your voice to stop the BLM from moving forward with the September lease sale and stop destroying Wyoming's public lands and wildfire. BLM is the Bureau of Land Management, which plans to allow over 181,000 acres of public land in Wyoming to be ruined by big oil. Fracking causes irreversible harm to the environment, so it must be stopped. The water that is extracted or taken out by fracking can be radioactive and toxic. We cannot poison our wildlife and neighboring communities' water. Please don't forget to sign the petition. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Catherine. Okay, yeah, we are very concerned about the public land being sold off to oil and gas companies drilling and fracking on our public lands. Hello, I am Judith, a youth board artist and also part of Team 3. Team 3 works to protect clean air because kids breathe here. Speaking of clean air in our public lands, the amount of air pollution in our national parks are insane. Air pollution is affecting 90% of our national parks. This blocks how far we can see. In fact, the distance people can see at our national parks is shorter by about 50 miles, which is about 264,000 feet. Our national parks should be free of air pollution and should be there for everyone to see and enjoy. But in the past, a regulation or a rule has enabled or allowed us to protect ourselves, as well as the environment and atmosphere. So we have cleaner air and a cleaner environment. This rule is called the Hayes Rule. It's also part of the Clean Air Act, which I will talk about in a little bit. So the purpose of the Hayes Rule is to protect clean air, reduce air pollution, and improve visibility, or how far we can see, in our national parks. But the Trump administration has rolled back this rule. Without the Hayes Rule, tons of toxic sulfur dioxide and nitrogen dioxide will be scattered all throughout our air by burning fossil fuels, oil, gas, and coal. We'll breathe in toxic air pollution, which will irritate or harm the nose, throat, airways, and can cause coughing, shortness of breath, or a tight feeling around the chest. We need the Hayes Rule. So I will now talk about the Clean Air Act. The Clean Air Act, or CAA, is a federal law that protects human health and the environment from the effects of air pollution. Under the CAA, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA, is required to regulate or control air emissions that endanger public health and welfare. This act has prevented more than 400,000 premature deaths and hundreds of millions of cases of respiratory or breathing and cardiovascular disease. I will now talk about the rollback number 7 on the New York Times deregulation tracker, titled "Loosened a Rule Designed to Limit Toxic Emissions for Major Industrial Polluters." So the Trump administration is lifting key rules on toxic air pollution. This means that our health is in danger since no one is going to control these toxic pollutants. The Trump administration is rolling back protections for our air, water, and public lands, allowing major polluters to put more pollution into our environment. This rollback is making things worse. I will now talk about the Clean Power Plan Rule rollback. The Clean Power Plant Rule reduces carbon pollution from power plants, taking real action on climate change. Under this plan, states would have flexibility in how they lower pollution. This means carbon and air pollution would decrease, improving public health and our environment. Unfortunately, the Trump administration will replace this rule with ACE, Affordable Clean Energy. This rule fails to protect Americans from the increasing cost of climate change and does nothing to support clean energy. It's terrible that this replacement includes no real limits on climate pollution. It actually leads to increased pollution that harms our health. ACE leaves you unprotected from dangerous pollution that is increasing the climate crisis and is putting your health in danger. We need to demand that Congress stand against this attack. Now I'd like to introduce Jonah. Thank you.
Hi there. I'm Jonah from Team 4, Water is Life, and and working to protect safe drinking water in our oceans, rivers, and streams from pollution and toxic pesticides and chemical waste. Today, Judith and I are going to be talking about fracking and how harmful it is to our water and our climate. And we'll also be talking about a proposed bill to help stop fracking and the danger that it poses to American ecosystems and the health of thousands of people in our country.
Hello again. So Jonah, so we know that fracking is bad for our environment and that fracking is used to get natural gas, and burning natural gas creates methane, a greenhouse gas. Could you please explain what fracking is and why exactly fracking is bad for our environment?
Yes, thanks so much, Judith, and thanks a lot also for telling us about those rollbacks. That's so important. Fracking is a widely used method of extracting or taking out natural gases and oil from a type of rock called shale. And that, like you said, is deeply harmful to the environment.
Can you please explain what shale is and how it's formed or created?
Okay, so shale is a type of rock that's formed when carbon-rich mud and sediments compress together over thousands of years. And that mud also has to have significant amounts of a substance called kerogen, which slowly transforms into that oil and natural gas over time. And this oil becomes trapped in these layers of rocks as it forms. And fracking is the process that we use to free up that oil and collect it from the rock. So that process is we drill deep into the earth, and then we push water and sand and chemicals deep into the earth at a really high pressure to crack up all that shale so that the oil and the natural gas can fizzle out of those cracks and up towards the surface where we collect it. We call that process fracking because of how it cracks up the rocks. So it's also known, fracking is also known as hydraulic fracturing, and it's got its name because of the fact that the shale cracks and breaks down due to the high pressure of the water and sand and chemicals. So, you know, when something breaks, we might say that it's fractured, which is like fracking. So you might be thinking, you know, why do we need this oil? What's it for? Why do we go to all this trouble of drilling deep into the earth and pumping all these chemicals down there? And we use this oil much of the time to create plastic. And also, fracking pollutes the water and soil and the air with these toxins because when we pump all those chemicals down there, it's not like those chemicals go away. You know, they stay in the earth or they get in our water supply. Fracking also causes water depletion because of how much water we need to pump down into the earth at such a high pressure. Recently in Arkansas, researchers found that water levels in 51% of its streams were dangerously low because of people taking water for fracking. Fracking also creates underground holes and cavities that can collapse into sinkholes. And as was previously mentioned, fracking can lead to earthquakes because it raises the pressure of the earth and creates cracks in the underground shale formations, which can destabilize the earth. But there's a little bit of good news, and that is a new piece of potential legislation that could help us to limit the impact of fracking and plastics on our environment. And that is called the Bill to Ban Fracking, which is Bill S-3247. The Fracking Ban Act has been introduced in the Senate by Senator Bernie Sanders of Vermont, and it would prohibit permits for the expansion of fracking practices anywhere in the United States, and it would phase out fracking as a method of extracting those fossil fuels from the earth, it's so important that we support this legislation. I think there's a petition in our website. Please sign that if you have a chance. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for explaining fracking. Thank you, Jonah and Catherine, for for explaining, for talking about this because it's so important. So can you please tell us what happens when fossil fuels are removed from shale and other rock formations?
For sure. So, like I said briefly before, we use that shale oftentimes to make plastics. And these plastic things, you know, is anything from forks and knives to Legos, and they're oftentimes thrown away after a single time, and they're left to pollute our ocean, hurt animals, wildlife in the ocean like whales, turtles, seabirds, and for that matter, all of us. You know, that plastic is only used a single time and only for a few minutes, and it's so unfortunate that so much of, you know, our society uses that. Many of these plastics are produced in something called petrochemical plants.
We might have lost Jonah there. Right. So Jonah was just talking about, there you go. You were just talking about petrochemical plants where we produce all of this terrible locations where we're producing all of this terrible, all of these terrible chemicals, right? And so, and our oil refinery people that are working on this, probably amazing, wonderful, nice people. It's just that when they're doing the drilling and doing the fracking, the result is terrible, terrible air pollution, water pollution, earthquakes. My sister used to live in Oklahoma. Such a big impact in the number of an increase of the number of earthquakes happening. And so we just really want to stop this process and retrain those workers, give them great jobs in renewable energy. And there are ways to do that and plans to do that. And later you'll hear from Jillian about a climate action plan from Kamala Harris. And it was amazing, Jonah's information and the petition to support Bernie Sanders' bill, Senator Sanders' bill, to ban fracking. We must ban fracking because it's just really not the right thing to do at all, polluting our water. And when you burn these fossil fuels, polluting our air, we have to get away from fossil fuels and divest, as Leanna has said. So, Jonah, I think you're back on. And so take it away.
I'm back. So sorry about that, everybody.
Okay,
I don't know what happened there. But yeah, like you were talking about, the places where we take that oil from fracking, we make it into plastic are these places called petrochemical plants. And these plants they're taking place all over the United States, but especially in an area where they're having a significant impact on the members of the community. It's this place called Chemical Corridor in Louisiana. And there are hundreds of natural gas and fossil fuel refineries in these petrochemical plants right along the stretch of the Mississippi that leak huge amounts of chemicals and toxins into the surrounding area. And because of these leakage, this area has also become known as Cancer Alley because of this staggering amount of toxin-related cancer cases in the area. And it's just so sad and tragic that the residents and the children of this area are forced to live in an environment that literally poisons them every single day. You know, these plants are not just in Chemical Corridor, they're taking place all over the United States. And the corporations that run these plants have taken really immense efforts to spread their destructive practices. And part of that has been taking place due to something called lobbying, which is when organizations or corporations try to persuade policymakers to take their stance on something or allow them to do something. And the chemical industry has been pumping tons and tons of money into lobbying. You know, Dow Chemical, one of the biggest chemical companies, raised their funding for lobbying up $2 million this year. And the American Chemical Society, another huge one, raised it $1 million. And these companies use their lobbying power and their money to convince lawmakers to restrict people who love the environment and care about the safety of their communities from protesting against them. West Virginia very recently passed a law that makes it illegal to protest the actions of oil and gas companies in the state. People are protesting 2 oil pipelines right now that would damage threatened areas of forests and wetlands and potentially harm water. We know how harmful these pipelines are to clean water and the health of our ecosystems. And it's absolutely essential that people in the state are allowed to use their voice to fight for the safety of their communities and the environment. And it's tragic that our lawmakers have bowed to the pressure of these big companies in their lobbying, because this isn't just happening in West Virginia. There's also happened in South Dakota and Kentucky, and there's similar legislation that's being pushed through passes in Alabama and Mississippi as well. So moving on a little bit, I wanted to talk to you guys about something called greenwashing, which is a technique used by corporations to make their product seem like it's environmentally friendly. And maybe you've seen a product at the store use words like vegan and organic, non-toxic, recyclable, when really those products, they're not actually good for the environment at all. But they make us feel comfortable in buying them. And I put some examples on the slide for you guys to look at. The companies use these words as tools to like deceive us into thinking that by buying this, we're not harming the environment. So what can we do about this? Because how do we know whether something really is non-toxic or recyclable? Well, first, you can examine the product and look at what exactly are they claiming to be green. You can also ask, like, look on the website. If it's not on the website, find a way to contact people in the corporation, whether it's calling or by email. And if they don't respond or they try to escape your questions, they're probably greenwashing. You can also look for certifications and seals from independent third parties. Check who founded and funds that third party. Don't look at the marketing, but check the facts and labels. Check the whole product. Look how it's made. Look at what it's made out of. For example, if a product that is made from paper says that it's plant-based, that really doesn't say anything about whether that product is environmentally friendly, because all paper is plant-based. It doesn't mean that it's good for the environment. There's tons of examples of greenwashing happening. One way that SC Johnson did was make their own environmental certification system to trick you into thinking, oh, we have this nice label on here saying that it's green list, when in reality, that's just something that they made up for themselves, which is so wrong. And to return to the topic of fracking and fossil fuels that I talked about earlier, natural gas companies use this technique all the time in their advertising. Companies like BP, which recently actually ran into some legal trouble about this because they had an advertising campaign talking about how they're keep advancing and endless possibilities, things like that, that make you feel like, well, maybe they're focusing on green efforts and stuff like that, when really the vast majority of their efforts just focus on pumping more oil and natural gas. Oil companies frequently use the term, I don't know if you may have heard it, called clean burning natural gas. Unfortunately, this is just another example of greenwashing. Natural gas is 85 to 95% methane, one of the worst greenhouse gases, which is 86 times worse than carbon dioxide over 20 years, and makes up 25% of man-made global warming. Another example of greenwashing is something called the Keep America Beautiful campaign, which was a nonprofit started in 1953 by beverage and packing corporations and big tobacco in the US. They've had all kinds of advertising campaigns, one of which famously was a Native American crying over all the trash in his environment. But it wasn't, unfortunately, they used a Italian American actor, which is just an example of how this is just not it's not a good thing, this Keep America Beautiful campaign. And laws were proposed to require companies to only sell beverages in reusable containers. But really, the campaign shifted the focus from regulating the production of companies that only made one single-use containers to the people who littered it on the floor. The litter bug was more the problem, not the companies making it. So with that, thanks so much for listening to me. I'd like to introduce Jillian, who's going to talk more about natural gas.
Yes, thank you so much, Jonah. First off, I'm Jillian. I'm an intern with Clean Earth for Kids, and I am a public health major. And I would like to talk to you today about fracking and methane. So methane is a greenhouse gas, which has been mentioned several times throughout this panel, but what it does is it allows radiation to get trapped in the atmosphere and essentially heat up the atmosphere. So there is a direct scientific connection between methane and fracking. At one point, scientists looked at cows and wetlands to be the majority of the blame, but in fact, shale operations hold the majority of that blame. Now, two-thirds of gas production over the past 10 years from fracking is in the United States and Canada. And the atmospheric methane concentrations have been rising steadily since 2008. And the specific scientific proof that I'm talking about was released by Cornell researchers. Now, during fracking operations for petroleum and natural gas, methane is released, but it also happens throughout the other processes related to fracking, such as venting, flaring, and transportation. And of course, during the fracking process, as Jonah has mentioned, there's a mix of chemicals and water and sand, which are forced down into the shale layer and split the rock, allowing for the fossil fuel to come out. Unfortunately, the systems that collect these fossil fuels are not foolproof and result oftentimes in leaks, which is how methane enters the atmosphere. And the same could be said about the equipment that's used for transportation of fossil fuels, like natural gas. I'm concerned about methane specifically for two reasons. The first is because it is potent. It's a very strong greenhouse gas, which really speeds up climate change. Scientists have pointed out that it's 86 times worse than carbon dioxide over a span of 20 years. And natural gas, which is used as this greener option when talking about fossil fuels, is actually 85 to 95% methane. So when you burn it or use it or transport it, it releases methane into the atmosphere. And 25% of man-made global warming is from methane. Now, the majority of methane comes from, man-made methane, comes from the oil and gas industries and fracking. And the US oil and gas industry alone leaks 13 million metric tons of methane every year. With more methane being released into the atmosphere, it makes the rollbacks that were spoken about earlier in the panel even more serious. Specifically, a rollback that I have been researching deals with the transportation of natural gas called LNG. And basically, this would allow companies to transport LNG by train through crowded metropolitan areas, meaning more pollution over those areas than there already are. And not only is this dangerous, but again, it's based off the idea that natural gas is in fact clean when methane is a huge problem related to natural gas. So just as a heads up, I am writing an editorial and I hope to have that available to you guys next week. It's in the finishing stages right now. As it's also been said earlier in this panel, strong climate action is needed. And I'd like to share a few highlights of Kamala Harris's climate action plan, considering she is now a candidate for the second highest office in America. Now, during her run for the Democratic nomination, she released a plan called the Climate Plan for the People, which gave extensive details on how she would save the environment. A few of those key points she continues to push as a vice president candidate. And the two that I would like to talk about are the Climate Equity Act and the plan to create an international climate change coalition. So first, the Climate Equity Act. This is a bill that is sponsored by Senator Kamala Harris and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Basically, it would allow communities who are most impacted by environmental problems, so those frontline communities that Leanna talked about earlier, to voice their opinion when it comes to making environmental law. Essentially, this act would require all climate and environmental legislation to have what's called an equity score. And it would basically reflect the impact numerically on at-risk communities. It would also require an extra review on any federal legislation, and it would create a new independent office to hold everybody accountable in both of these areas of government. And the International Climate Change Coalition is basically an international group that would be composed of the United States and everyone else who wanted to make legitimate change, working together to completely phase out fossil fuels. They specifically talk in her plan about phasing out carbon usage. And basically these change coalitions work together by providing access to technology and resources and just general support in actually working to phase out fossil fuels, which, as we know, based on research, is critical considering the state that our planet is in right now. And with all that being said, Janice, do you want to take it away?
Yes, thank you. So under the Trump administration, unfortunately, there have been many rollbacks or cuts in protections for our water. We are deeply concerned about our water. The Clean Water Act, Clean Water Rule, Streams Act, and so much more are under threat. So you might be asking, what is the Clean Water Act? The Clean Water Act is a U.S. federal law that relegates the discharge of pollutants into the nation's surface waters, including lakes, rivers, streams, wetlands, and coastal areas, while also restoring and maintaining chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the nation's waters. The Clean Water Act sets water quality standards, handles enforcement, maintains the integrity of wetlands, and helps state and local governments develop their own pollution control plans. One way that they handle enforcement is by requiring business to apply for federal permits for any discharge of pollutants into our waterways. They help the local and state governments by recognizing the responsibilities the states need to address when dealing with pollution and providing the right assistance to enable these states to develop their own plans, including funding for publicly owned treatment works for the improvement of wastewater treatment. The rollbacks and cuts hurt the Clean Water Act because without the protection of wetlands, streams, and pretty much any body of water, there is a risk of incidental pollution, chemical exposure, and pollution from factory pipes that can all end up in our drinking water. One example of a rollback that is affecting the Clean Water Act is the Navigable Water Protection Rule that's already slowing and decreasing the protections the Clean Water Act has put in place. The Clean Water Rule is a clarification of the Clean Water Act that defines which streams and wetlands are protected by the Clean Water Act. It is also known as WOTUS, or Waters of the United States. The reason this rule was created was because a narrow definition for the Clean Water Act would leave many wetlands and streams vulnerable to pollution from sources like concentrated animal feeding operations, or CAFOs, industrial facilities, and urban stormwater. The Clean Water Rule, or WOTUS, would enforce pollution prevention efforts by the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA, for rivers, streams, and lakes. This rule was created in 2015 by the Obama administration because, as I said, there were too many loopholes. The Clean Water Rule and our water is being hurt by the Navigable Water Protection Rule that was put in place by the Trump administration in an attempt to reduce the protections of the Clean Water Act by replacing WOTUS, or the Clean Water Rule. The Navigable Waters Protection Rule is called by many as the Dirty Water Rule because it harmfully and illegally narrows the scope of the Clean Water Act by revoking federal protections for important streams, wetlands, and other waters. This new rule excludes millions of miles of rain-dependent streams and millions of acres of wetlands from critical safeguards of the Clean Water Act. The Streams Act is the protection of small streams, including those that don't flow all the time, that make up the majority of the country's waters. They could be a drizzle of snowmelt that runs down a mountain crease, a small spring-fed pond, or a crater in the ground that fills with water after every rain and overflows into the creek below. These water sources that scientists refer to as headwater streams are often unnamed and rarely appear on maps. Yet, the health of small streams is critical to the health of the entire river network and downstream communities. These small streams often appear insignificant, but in fact, they are very important as they feed into and create our big rivers. The Streams Act and our water is being hurt by the cut of protections or rollbacks because, like I've said above, the protections that hold them in place are very important, but are being taken away. Streams, headwater, and streams that flow only part of the year provide many upstream and downstream benefits. They protect against floods, filter pollutants, recycle potentially harmful nutrients, and provide food and habitat for many types of fish. These streams also play a critical role in maintaining the quality and supply of our drinking water, ensure a continual flow of water to surface waters, and help recharge underground aquifers. Also, with plastic bags, straws, lids, bottles, utensils, and many more plastics getting into the water, it makes everything even more difficult. Jillian, would you like to say a few words on plastic?
Absolutely. Thank you, Janice. As we know and have been mentioned before on not just this panel, but several in the past, plastics are harming our water, our air, and our environment. They are major polluters, and the process of actually getting a hold of plastic is very toxic. So last week, I asked a few questions that were open questions to get you thinking about how you use plastic every day. Because eliminating plastics is definitely a process. So this week, were you able to avoid more plastics? Were you able to store your foods and drinks in stainless steel or glass or something other than plastic when it was possible? Did you notice plastic containers labeled with a specific recyclable symbol? Because remember, you want to avoid plastics, number 3, number 6, and number 7. Number 3 is PVC. PVC is dangerous because it can leach harsh chemicals into whatever you store in PVC containers, and because it is not recyclable and very damaging on the environment. And you want to avoid 6 because it is what is labeled as PS, or polystyrene, also known as styrofoam. This is bad because it again is not recyclable and it breaks down easily in the natural environment, making it a huge polluter. And number 7, which is labeled other, but contains stuff like bisphenol A or BPA. As these products are not recyclable, you cannot use them after they've had their lifespan, after they've used up their lifespan. And again, the process of making them is very harmful to the environment. Did you remember not to heat your food or liquids in plastic containers? Because as we mentioned before, heat allows plastic to leach chemicals faster into whatever you put into them. And last but not least, did you share anything about plastics or break free from plastics on your social media? Because that is such a great way to get in touch with others about eliminating their plastics.
Yeah, so thank you so much for this. This is such a hard list. It's so absolutely challenging to break free from plastics completely. I was sharing with Judith the other day, I'm like, oh, my pen. Do I have a refillable pen? What can I do to break free from plastics? So a shout out to Surfrider for all that they do. So in terms of Rise Above Plastics and several campaigns, the Sierra Club and others, have been working really hard in RDC. So many important organizations work so hard to do this important work. So on our website, until tonight, I guess it's over tonight, there is a link where you can watch a movie called The Story of Plastics. And so that talks about what was presented here in terms of the fossil fuels, the drilling, the fracking, and the story of plastics. So next week, we'll talk a little bit about materials that are used to make our clothing, and thinking about how we can make some changes with that, because polyester and nylon are plastics, and little bits of microfiber get into our environment. So we want to work as hard as we can. I know you guys are trying to use reusable bottles, and you've got your reusable, sporks and forks, that you take other places to avoid using that plastic. And a shout out to all of you guys, and a special shout out to Judith and Kevin and Hannah and Denise and all of you, Leanna, who have shown up at city council meetings and talked about plans. So the city of Encinitas has some real plans about how to break free from plastics. So we'll hear from our friend Jim Wong and consultant and others about policies that we can put into place. And also on our Team 6 page, you'll see Judith and Hannah and Kevin and others interviewing restaurants that are working hard to reduce the amount of plastics that they use. So, and get away from those plastic bags and things like that. So I know in the time of COVID, it's pretty challenging. So I guess I'd like to say that Representative, our Congress member, Mike Levin, has a challenge going on right now to make homemade masks. So if you're a person that sews or likes to do these, you can check out his website at mikelevin.com. He is our representative for our district here in Southern California. So you can check that out. So we want everyone to stay safe, stay happy, look for the good, and work hard for change, because we know things aren't so rosy out there in the world, but we do our best to try to work for change, and that keeps us going. So positive. So I know Denise would like to share something. So go ahead, Denise.
Thank you. I just want to say that I hope everyone is staying safe during this time and practicing social distancing to keep yourself and others safe. And while you're at home or social distancing, you can visit cleanerforkids.org and have a look at our 6th grade teams and find more information that might not have been discussed on this panel discussion. You can also take a look at our petitions, resources, information, contests, challenges, and community service and internship opportunities. And also for people who might be watching this on YouTube, if you missed any of our webinars, we record each one and post them on our YouTube channel, Cleaner for Kids, along with more information. So make sure you subscribe and get notifications to stay informed. Also check out our Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, where we post, retweet, and inform whenever we can.
Yes, thank you so much for all of that. Great things to remember. So before we close, we have just a minute or two. I'd like to go around and I'll do it. I'll start with Leanna. So happy birthday tomorrow, by the way. So I'd like to ask you something that you're really excited about working on right now. So if you could each think about one thing that you're working on or planning to work on, or share with us next week or in the future, that would be amazing. And if it's more than one, that's okay too. So Leanna, I'll start with you. Go ahead.
Yeah, of course, and thank you again. So a few things I'm excited to work on that I've been planning. I've been writing ideas down for is this like video series I'm planning on doing of like that focuses more on Team One things, so about renewable energy, sustainability, climate action plans, and I'm going to try and edit them and put them on YouTube so that way they're more accessible for everyone to learn more about, try to make them user friendly and like digestible for the average person to understand. So I'm really excited to work on those. Been working on those recently, and then I'm also hoping to start up a carbon neutrality training thing that will us at Clean for Kids will be doing, that we can hopefully teach everyone how to lessen their carbon footprint and what carbon neutrality is, and just get everyone a little bit more educated on the subject and how it kind of relates back to climate action plans. So those are a few things I'm excited to start working on. Yeah.
Yeah, fabulous. Catherine, what about you?
Hi. Something that I am personally working on is being more active on social media with educating my followers, friends, and family about issues that are happening and petitions that we can sign. Because I think that through social media, we can reach more people. Something else that I will also be working on in the near future is tree plantings in Oceanside and Vista Elementary School. So that's going to be really exciting. And yeah, that's all I can think of right now.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Okay, so Judith, what about you?
For me, I'm gonna create more artwork, probably more on like rollbacks and more about in the future right now we're currently working on a book, a storybook. So I'm gonna create some drawings on the characters, and yeah, I can't think of anything else. But yeah.
No, you do so much. Are you serious? And thank you for putting the placeholders in for the slides. And I apologize to everyone tonight. Our slides were a little bit off. I don't know if you could see me trying to tell John we had a little bit of a lag. So I was trying to like tell him without moving my mouth. So I was like, it goes to the next one. Anyway, thanks guys. You're so flexible. And thank you for everyone, with us and hanging with us. So for our YouTube, we'll actually cut out what I just said, and we'll put in some slides where they go. So everything will be just beautiful. So that will be amazing. So, okay. All right. So thank you so much for that. So Jillian, would you like to share?
Yeah, so some big things that I'm working on is probably the editorial that I'm almost finished with, contacting some future panel participants that are pretty well known, and possibly expanding some of these things to North Carolina, because that's where I live and go to school in. So I'm hoping to expand not only to the state, but specifically to my college campus.
Yeah, so excited about that. What about you, Jonah?
Well, I'm still working on, I'm going to hopefully have one of my former professors who's an expert on bees come and speak to us in a future panel discussion. And in addition, I was recently reached out to by somebody who represents an organization called Pacemaker International, which focuses on education it's largely been Kenya, but this person is hoping to expand that to the United States and work on providing education to kids who don't have it here. And since that a little bit ties in with what we do here, I'm just going to be talking to them, and of course to you too, Suzanne.
Yeah. No, keep it up. Of course, we do the reach out. Yeah, we're all about education. So we definitely, and everything we have on our website is free. We don't charge for anything. There are no salaries. I don't take a salary. There are no salaries. All our grant money goes 100% to, our grants to plant trees, no island signs, scholarships, and all those things. So we're all about education. So that sounds so beautiful. And thank you for connecting with those people. I know we're reaching out to more people through social media and Twitter and Instagram and things like that. So yeah, great job, and so excited for everybody to get their, all that they need for sure. Okay, so Denise, I saved you for last because you did such a great job of almost ending before, and then I asked you guys a question. So if you'd like to share, and then if you'd like to say good night, and then could you also remind people, if anyone wants to stay on ask any questions, but I'm happy to stay on with people. And that would be just great. And I know you guys will probably hop off. You're in school. People are working so hard, and I'm so proud of you for all that you're doing. I know Vista and a couple of school districts haven't started yet, but most of us are in school and working on stuff at the same time. So anyway, thank you so much, and don't feel like you need to stay on. But great job, and happy birthday tomorrow. And I do apologize about the slides. And if you ever see my mouth moving, I'm trying to not to do that. I want to be a ventriloquist, right? And let John know, like, hey, go to the next one without moving my mouth. But anyway, I'm super proud of all of you. Excellent job. So Janice, if you will do your talk about what you're working on and excited about working on. And also, hey, excellent slideshow, all of you guys. I mean, just like phenomenal, always, all the time. I learn new things every single time. You're just so amazing. Okay, so if you'll do that, and then you'll close us out, and then I'm going to ask John to come over here. Yes. Because he's going to promote people to panelists, so then we can hear from them. So one of our favorite, sorry, we shouldn't have favorites, but volunteer Sydney Pitcher, who's made some video clips, is on with us now. So we'll be able to hear from her. And we know that we're so excited about Alicia and Elijah and all the important work that they're doing with with NAACP. So I'm so excited for them to do more and more all the time. So, okay,
hi, you guys.
All right. So you guys can say bye, but first, Denise, go for it.
Okay, so something that I'm right now working on along with the creative team of Clean Earth for Kids, consisting of artists and writers of different sorts, is we're working on a story like Judith had said. So I'm really excited about writing a few chapters and a few stories for that. And I'm also working on more resources to put on the water page to help keep people informed and make it easy for people to see the information they need to see.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. You forgot to say good night.
Oh, yes. If you'd like to stay on the call, you can. I'm going to interrupt you really quick. Hi, Alicia and Elijah. We're super excited before everybody hops off our youth. We're so excited for you guys to be on and to be sharing. And you've been doing such an amazing job with the stories. That's been so fun, and learning and everything. And Alicia, you have a new hairdo today. Very pretty, of course. Anyway, excited to talk with you guys. So, okay, Janice, you gave us some great things that you're working on. So could you let us know? Or I'm sorry, I'm multitasking. John's telling me something at the same time. Could you please tell us good night? And tell you that we have another panel discussion next week, so make sure to tune in and check it out if you can, and check up on our YouTube channel, Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook.
Okay, there we got it. Okay, bye guys.